Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Let's do a local sports roundup brought to you by good friends at Carpet City Flooring Center. By the way, Carpet City Flooring Center, because starting in just a few days, they're going to be over here working on our new studios.
Yeah.
Brandon knows what they're doing, but I'm not revealing it
I can't
yet.
say that, but looking around your studio right now, you are very much in
pack-up mode.
In transit.
Yep.
As far as moving things from one place to another.
Yep. So very excited for them to get here and add something that's going to be pretty darn cool to our new studio. But with it, because you actually have to head out a little bit earlier today, so let's start off there. Golf. Bloomer, is it that you're going to?
Yes, Bloomer's got their annual invite this morning up at Bloomer Memorial Golf Course. A lot of the smaller school teams are there, obviously Bloomer. A lot of the Clover Belt teams, San Luis Cadet, some other teams from around the area, some teams a little bit further up north as well. So it's always a big deal. Actually, usually it's the Friday of the draft, like the second and third round. Like that's just how it's always worked out. This year, it's a week later.
Okay.
So that actually works out well for me because otherwise, if it was this time last week, I wouldn't have been able to go, obviously. So looking forward to getting up there and kind of jetting around Bloomer Memorial Golf Course to grab some photos, and I got some other stuff I'm working on as well. So yeah, but I mean, golf's coming up. I mean, Monday we've got the Big Rivers. I believe is at Lake Wissota for Chippewa Falls. Actually, next week, Chippewa Falls and Menominee are actually hosting kind of a combo tourney.
Ooh.
Where it's a 2-day tourney, 1 day at each course. And I think it's Friday, I believe, is back at Wissota.
Okay.
And then Saturday, I believe, is at Tangle Greens and Menominee. So I believe that's next weekend.
Okay.
No, or maybe that's this weekend. It actually might be this weekend now that I think about it. So I think next weekend might be the big 2-day tournament up in Hayward.
That's Big Fish?
Yeah, Big Fish, and I think just Hayward Golf Club. So But yeah, now we're starting. I mean, we're in May, so we're not that far away from. It's crazy to say, but any of the postseasons for these.
Yeah, because I mean, it's usually beginning of June or somewhere middle June.
Usually around. And this year, with the way Memorial Day falls, it kind of throws everything a bit for a loop. Like normally, track and field is like the Tuesday and Friday, like after, before, or the Monday and Thursday before Memorial Day, but that's not the case this year because it's after Memorial Day, so it's the Tuesday and Friday afterwards. Like Memorial Day is a little bit earlier.
Right.
So stuff is just kind of a little different. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, but regardless, it's still coming. Yeah.
Staying with Bloomer, but a sport that's not active, but necessarily it's still a big heart. Tyler Mickelson's the new Bloomer head coach.
Yeah,
for
familiar face, obviously, for plenty of people in the area. Was the coach of Fall Creek before from 2020 to 2023. Had some good success there in helping that program kind of, get back in the contention in the Clover Belt. So, but he's someone, he coached a couple of years under John Post prior to the Fall Creek job in Bloomer. So he's familiar with it. He's also a teacher in the district. So there's just familiarity there. And for him, just the opportunity to be able to jump back into, coaching football, to do it in the district, with the kids, it just worked out. Like when he was in Fall Creek, like when he had to step down, it wasn't, he loved the situation that everyone had built there. It's just that when you're teaching and living in Bloomer and you're coaching in Fall Creek, that's a lot of time commitment. And with with his kids getting a little older and stuff like that. But this is just kind of the the perfect storm of everything working together. So now he jumps into a Bloomer team that obviously has a long track record of success, but that's a team that's going to have some new faces this year, coming up. So probably, a good time for him to kind of, jump in.
I know you've been posting a lot, articles and such lately on softball.
Yes.
So kind of taking a look at your neck of the woods, your area when it comes to softball. Where are we at in the point of the season there? What are some of the? Do we have any close races?
Well, I think we're kind of starting to see. We're getting to that time of year where you can really start to see conference title races develop. Chippewa Falls is currently up top for softball. They're a game up on New Richmond. Last year, New Richmond won the conference championship, then beat Chippewa in the game to go to state.
Okay.
Those teams still have to play twice. They'll play a little bit later on this year, but New Richmond kind of hot on their tail. Chippewa Falls yesterday beating Rice Lake to win both those games this week. Eau Claire North early in the year knocked off Chippewa Falls, but Chippewa Falls is kind of started to figure it out a little bit more since then. Some good pitching this week. Willa Reisinger, Violet McElwain, kind of helping keep the Warriors at bay as far as the runs scored, and then they're just kind of rounding into form offensively. I mean, it's a team that graduated, I think, four-year players last year into this year. So it's a largely, in many ways, newer lineup for the Cardinals. But they always, they produce, especially hitters. Like here recently, like they're just the team that's always going to have kind of the lineup that has like 4 or 5 kids that can go deep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that doesn't always happen, but that's just kind of the way their program is. So then you look at the Western Clover Belt, you still got 2 teams that are unbeaten in league play after last night, and that's Fall Creek and Thorpe. Fall Creek knocked off Stanley Boyd. That was a game I was at in Thorpe. They didn't play a conference game last night, but both those teams are scheduled to play doubleheader next week, so that could be 2 unbeaten conference teams battling over the lead, but both of them have tough matchups tonight. Fall Creek's at McDonald to play the Max. That was I believe a 1-run game when they played last week. And then Thorpe hosts Stanley Boyd, which was also a really tight matchup when they played as well. So, you got McDonald kind of hot on the tail of both of them right there. So as that develops, I mean, and even beyond the regular season, I think those are going to be 3 prime contenders in their respective divisions once you get to the postseason as well. Fall Creek last year won the Division 4 title. They bump up to Division 3 this year. So they're going to be in a tough section with the likes of Grantsburg, who also moves up and who they played an absolute marathon game with to go to state last year. So, those are 3 teams, I think, not just right now, but also beyond that, you're going to have to really keep an eye on once softball gets, fully in the swing of things underway. So, And then, jumping over to baseball, New Richmond right now at the top of the Big Rivers, that's a team that brought back a ton of guys from last year, so they kind of came into this year with the idea like, okay, we can contend, and right now they're doing it. Hudson right there, kind of hot on their heels, and then you kind of have this big mess of Chippewa Falls, Eau Claire North, River Falls, Menominee, Eau Claire Memorial, just kind of all right on kind of jockeying for position there, and Chippewa Falls picking up the win last night over Rice Lake. Hudson knocked off Memorial. Eau Claire North picking up a win over Menominee. New Richmond beat River Falls to stay unbeaten in conference play. So we're going to really, I think next week is going to be kind of a big week for, maybe a little bit of separation as far as, not just with those top 2 teams, but even in those middle groups, because I believe Chippewa Falls plays Eau Claire North in 2 games next week. So, and the thing too is we're not that far away from, seeding for these postseasons.
Oh, yeah.
So, and when you look at, especially like the Big Rivers, when you look at this just big mess of teams and know that most of those teams are going to be playing each other in the postseason. Like, every little bit you can get as a coach to kind of go to that seeding meeting and say, hey, well, we beat this team and this team. Like, that's
still a seeding meeting when it comes to baseball?
It is. Yep. Not all, some of them have gone to the electronic way of doing it, but I do believe still like baseball and softball is.
Gotcha. So, okay.
And the Western Clover Belt, it's a mess, and I mean that in a positive way. Like, Bloomer right now up top, they've only got 1 conference loss. They took 2 games this week from McDonald, but you got Regis kind of up there as well. But Cadott picked up a big win last night over Regis, a big night out of Warren Bovey, striking out double digits, and the St. Thomas commit really just kind of showing why he's going to play baseball in D1. I mean, he's a powerful player at the plate and in the field, and but Fall Creek picked up the win over Stanley Boyd, so they're still right there in the race as well. McDonald kind of said they had a couple losses there, but I think they're going to be a team that once you get to the postseason, they're in Division 4 this year, so they're a team that's going to be one to contend with as well. So we're at this time of year, you just hope Mother Nature gifts you with good weather, so you can just get these games in and they don't stack up. Exactly.
So we have track and field going on,
Track and field going on. I believe Eau Claire Memorial is hosting the Old Abe Invite today over at Eau Claire Memorial. So that's
be cool to actually have that over there with their new facilities.
Right. And it's hopefully this weather kind of clears out a little bit and everything is dried, so they can do that all. Go gung ho. I know next Tuesday Bloomer's hosting. It's I believe it's annual the Dave Landgraf Memorial Invite up there, which is always a big deal for a lot of smaller school teams in the area. A lot of really good athletes are going to be in action up there, so that'll be one to kind of keep an eye on too. But yeah, we're next. I believe it's next week. We would be 2 weeks away from conference meets.
Wow!
So it's
once you soccer get to, is still going on too.
Oh yeah, soccer. Last night, Chippewa Falls girls picked up a win over Eau Claire North. It's their first conference win in a couple years. So big win on them. A couple goals for Lizzie Dallas, who is approaching the program's scoring record.
Okay.
So she, if continues, that's something she, could get, coming up here pretty quick. But kind of the in the girls soccer world, the favorites are, usually who you expect to be the favorites in the big rivers when you talk about the Hudsons and the Memorials of the world, and New Richmond up in there as well. So we've got we're kind of getting to the River Falls as well up there. They went to state last year, so New Richmond. So you've kind of got, it's still pretty early in the conference season, but yet you've still got some separation happening. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing with the big rivers too is once you get to the latter part of that season, is they don't play. Every team doesn't play each other twice. What they do is they'll play once through, and then they actually kind of split off the conference based on where you finish, and then you play. Like, it's kind of tiered. So like the top 3 teams will play each other, the middle 3 teams will play each other again, the bottom 3 teams will play each other again. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit different. It's like your own mini little like a Clover Belt crossover-esque, but just inside your own conference. So
right. All right, let's take a break.
Yeah, and just as a quick reminder, that was the Chippewa Falls / Menominee boys golf tournament. That is this weekend, so that's today over at Wissota, and then tomorrow at Tanglewood Greens in Menominee. So
gotcha. All right,